Hi, my name's Sherry. Welcome to Well-Rounded Mama's YouTube channel. Today I'm joined by Rory, and Rory is one of our doulas, and she is also a lactation counselor down here. This is the first video I'm dragging her into, so I'm so excited that you get to meet her. As I mentioned in the previous video, we are doing a 4-part series about things you might hear at your pediatrician's office that may or may not be perfectly accurate. As birth professionals, we never want to contradict information, so it's really hard for us when somebody comes back into our office and says, well, I was told this. And I think that's the most confusing part about postpartum is you get so much information. You are flooded with so much conflicting information. We recommend you like, subscribe, and ring the bell if you want to keep watching, but also look below. We're going to share some links to different sites so that you can print things up and see things on paper, because we do kind of support the evidence. So we are frequently looking to the World Health Organization, the CDC. We're looking to individuals that have already done some kind of groundwork on this, and we kind of are following what works and what we have seen. We're going to tackle 3 things today. This is the big one. Rory's like, oh my gosh, this is so much stuff to tackle. But today we're going to tackle jaundice, weight gain, and introducing solids. The first one is a hard one because the American Academy of Pediatrics recently has kind of changed. But it used to say that all you were doing was you were looking for things within a new baby. You were looking for a certain amount of bowel movements. You were looking for a baby that wasn't lethargic. You were looking for a baby that was nursing well. And so long as all of those things were happening, they were saying there really is no reason to test bilirubin levels for jaundice. So when your baby's in utero, they're obviously not breathing air. They're getting their oxygen from your blood. And so they have all these extra red blood cells when they're born. Right?
Yes.
So far, so good?
Yes, so far, so good. And when those red blood cells, right, they start to kind of die off a little bit once baby's born, and especially right where we run into problems with jaundice is if there's any kind of birth trauma, right? So they'll have a little bit of an excess of these red blood cells and they have to get rid of them. Their livers are immature, and so they're not processing them in the same way that our bodies do as adults. We have to kind of get them to poop is the big goal.
Trick. And so that used to be what the American Academy, and then 2 years ago they kind of came out and said they really kind of want to bilirubin levels pulled on
all the babies.
So they're doing it in the hospital and they're doing it at pediatrician appointments, especially in the first, I would say, week. Mm-hmm. It used to be we were looking for like a certain number and for it to stay below a certain number, and since that has happened, it's kind of changed. Now we're looking for that number to double. So you could have a jaundice level of, say, 7, and prior to 2 years ago, we go, oh, 7's nothing. We don't care. But your doctor might be concerned and want you to come in for a second blood draw, because then if it doubles, then that's a sign that
it might continue to go higher.
So they're looking for patterns through blood. What does that mean for you as a brand new parent? What you can do to avoid problems when it comes to jaundice?
We want to make sure that baby is eating well, right? And if you're planning on breastfeeding, right, if that's kind of your goal, we also want to make sure that, that baby's getting enough and that we're protecting mom's milk supply. So those are kind of our 2 big goals. Because of course, nobody wants, if jaundice levels get too high, right, the worry is that then it's going to cause some sort of permanent damage. And you'll see that the pediatricians will really throw that at you as a kind of scare tactic to get you to start supplementing. And there's lots of ways that we can supplement. It doesn't have to be with formula. They seem to think that formula is the medicine for jaundice these days.
I've actually heard that come out of their mouths.
Yes, but it's not true. As long as we're getting that bilirubin, right, as long as we're getting those blood cells pushed through baby system, we can do that with mom's milk if she wants to hand express or she wants to pump, any of that kind of stuff. If she doesn't have enough of a supply, we can get donor milk from another mom, or if you need to, supplement with formula. But there's ways to do that will continue to help support that breastfeeding relationship.
So the number one thing that you can do to kind of avoid jaundice is kind of make sure that you have support, especially if you're a first-time mom, getting support during breastfeeding. For some women, it works lickety-split and it's not an issue. But then there's sometimes individuals where that latch takes a little bit of time, and that's really what that postpartum time, that baby moon time that we're talking about is so important, is to give you that time and that ability to learn what cues to follow, how to correct a latch. We are going to create a video about tongue ties because we did feel like tongue ties deserved its own video. But tongue ties now are a big thing that we're seeing, and that is certainly affecting relationship. But there's a lot of things that can affect a breastfeeding relationship. I think what makes physicians a little bit nervous about the breastfeeding is they just feel feel like they can't weigh it. They really like this idea of going, the baby got X amount of substance, right? Whether that was formula, breast milk, they really liked that idea of weighing and measuring it. We do know that you can't have output without input. If you've got a kid that's having wet and poopy diapers, that doesn't happen magically
without something going in.
Without something going in those first 3 days. How many wet and poopy diapers are you supposed to be seeing?
So for every sort of 24 hours of life, we want to make sure that we're seeing at least one good bowel movement, right? Skid marks don't count, but at least one good bowel movement and at least one wet diaper for every day of life. So the first day, it's going to be one wet diaper and then one bowel movement. The second day, it's 2 wet diapers, 2 bowel movements. The third day, 3 and 1 to 3 bowel movements. And then by the 5th day, we'd really want to see 5 to 8 wet diapers. If it happens more than that, that's fantastic, but we don't want to be less than that just because that sort of gets us a little bit into the wondering if baby's actually taking in enough.
When your baby's born, you're just producing colostrum, which is a super concentrated small amount of breast milk, which is really important, and it kind of, there's a lot of good things, probably should be a video in its own. However, the reason why that happens is they're born with this tiny tummy. The hope is by day 3 or 4, your breast milk comes in and you're talking about a bigger quantity. And so those first 3 days, your child's stomach is getting a little bigger to ready to accommodate that milk that's going to come in. And that's really why you're seeing that pattern, is you're seeing the stomach getting bigger and you're seeing a larger quantity of breast milk. We really want you to know that even though we're in a pandemic right now, we are here to help. Our lactation counselors are still taking phone calls, they're doing telehealth visits, they're still doing occasionally office visits or home visits for those really extreme cases. We are all taking precautions. Jaundice, although it is something that happens occasionally, you can have a healthy breastfeeding relationship and not see it. In all of the deliveries I've seen less than a handful of true cases of jaundice in my entire career. And we're talking over 1,000 kids. So it's really uncommon to see a true case of jaundice. I wouldn't be superly concerned with a lot of things unless you are seeing a super lethargic baby, you are struggling with that latch, you aren't seeing wet and poopy diapers. And then a good rule of thumb for the yellowing of a baby, because some babies get a little yellow and that just happens. Sometimes that's based on ethnicity or race, but it's when the moment that the jaundice falls below the nipple line, then we're truly worried and concerned and would like to see a number on that baby. The second thing that we really want to talk about is weight gain. Talk to me a little bit about what the expectation of weight gain is with a breastfed baby.
Sure, yeah. So it's very normal for breastfed babies to lose a little bit of weight, right? Because they're just taking in these tiny amounts and their stomachs are teeny, teeny, tiny. So it's pretty normal for them to lose generally somewhere between probably about 5 to 7% of their birth weight. We've seen up to 10, but if it's over 10, most of the time that means something is wrong and it just needs a little bit of closer looking into. Generally, they're gonna lose a little bit of weight, and then as mom's milk comes in, right, we're gonna start to see that weight gain come back on. And generally, we want them to gain about 5 to 7 ounces a week, and we want them to be back to their birth weight by around 2 weeks.
What we always tell individuals, the baby may lose some weight in that first week, but the goal is the next week is we're gonna put all that weight back on. And so most of my clients come in at 1 week and they're back to birth weight, but I've seen some clients get scared by their pediatricians with this idea that if their kid's not back to birth weight within a week, that they're gonna recommend formula, and that's actually inaccurate information. It is a big falsehood that's put out there for breastfed babies, that the expectation is not that breastfed babies should be back to their birth weight within a week, because how discouraging and scary is that as a mom or a person who just had a baby to kind of be like, oh my gosh, I have 7 days to figure out this
this whole thing and all of it. I have to be perfect.
I have to be perfect. If your kid's not back to birth weight by week 2, then maybe we need to start having some conversations. But I'm always looking for progress. This idea that babies will be back to birth weight in a week means that your baby's putting on 1 pound a day. And that's an absolute saying that your baby has to put 7 pounds on in that first week. And that's just not actually the number that's required or requested. At the minimum, they should be putting on 1/2 ounce a day at a minimum. And putting on 1 pound a day is more of a maximum. And so we want to be somewhere in that.
In there. Yeah.
And there's some wiggle room with that, because every relationship is different. And scales, right? Some scales are better than other scales. And just remember, there's a little bit of human error when it comes to our scales even. And so just be patient and gentle and kind with yourself and your baby as they're figuring this out. And if you are a partner in the situation, the best thing you can do is support them and give them moments where they're not breastfeeding, let them sleep.
Yes. Absolutely. And I would add on to that, trust your instincts, right? That's such a huge piece of this. If you feel like something is wrong, just reach out and get some help, because really, like, it's either going to be someone like myself reassuring you that everything's good, or, you know, we'll go, oh yeah, maybe we could work on that latch a little bit, and, you know, we'll fix the problem and you'll be good to go.
The last thing that we want to talk about was introducing solids. And the reason why is because there seems to be this idea that if you've introduced solids sooner, your baby will sleep for longer periods of time.
I still run into a lot of parents who pediatricians are asking them to add in like rice into bottles at like 3 months old, 4 months old. And pretty much all the research that's out there says we can skip all that, right? It's better to sort of, for mom's milk supply and for baby's weight gain and their health, to kind of just stick to this on, you know, baby on demand feeding, and just keep giving them breast milk for, you know, as long as you can, and really not introducing solids until they're really showing that they're ready for it.
But I know, like, even for me personally, when my kids were sitting up at like 6 months and grabbing food off my plate, I let them do that. And my milk supply had a really hard time keeping up the moment my kids were eating food around 6, 7, 8, 9 months, whatever that kid, I had 6 of them, so they all have different like timelines, right? Where they would pick a little something off my plate. I really did struggle with that. So I can't imagine that once you start introducing something, your milk supply potentially might take a hit. This is a perfect time to say this, but we're not very good at taking care of ourselves.
Sure.
So we feed the kids and we don't feed ourselves. And so our breast milk doesn't sometimes keep up with it because we're not taking care of ourselves. Maybe we've gone back to work at this point and we're pumping. And so just, again, when it comes to this idea of introducing something foreign into a baby that's not breast milk, if you're choosing to exclusively breastfeed, it's certainly something that doesn't need to start happening until you've got a kid that's showing interest in getting other food. So just as we look for cues for the breastfeeding, for seeing when babies are hungry, those are perfect cues to look for to see that your baby's ready to start taking more of a solid or liquid, you know, type food, but something that certainly can be waited on. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully you find these helpful. We want to just be a help to parents at this time, especially for postpartum. I know a lot are wanting to avoid going into the office, because I know we're doing all postpartum visits for our clients in this stage, and we just really want individuals to feel supported. And so remember, follow your baby's cues, follow your intuition, follow your gut, ask a lactation counselor or consultant. They're there to help. You can call our office to get a hold of Rory or Caprice anytime. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're staying safe and that you had a good time with your family this last weekend. We look forward to seeing you next week. Please like, subscribe, and ring the bell.
Okay.
See, we can do this.
Helping to protect mom's blood supply. I mean, sorry. See? Too much blood.
You're born with colostrum. That's what I was gonna say. My grandbaby is 5 months right now, right? Oh.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, he is eyeballing my stuff.